Happy Turkey Day to all the Americans down there. And look, Andrew, to my right is Andrew Fantasia. We are Canada up top, and below us, we got executive producer Heidi and Lauren from the Galactic Podcast. Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Happy
We got ours out of the way. Happy Life. Did you guys celebrate Life Day this year?
It's all about the tibia.
I was there in spirit celebrating. How about that? I didn't watch. I didn't do a rewatch of it though.
No. How do people do rewatches of the holiday special?
Probably.
God, I hope so.
Probably. I would think so.
It's a lot funner. It's a lot more fun to watch people react to it on YouTube.
I have a question. Do you think the people reacting to it have actually watched it, or are they just reacting to it? Because does the whole thing exist in its entirety? Is that on YouTube still? I know it was like 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, like Disney doesn't care.
Yeah, that's true.
Did Favreau put it on Disney Plus, or am I remembering that wrong?
No,
Yeah.
But he mentioned it in episode 1 of The Mandalorian. Horatio Sands' character says something about celebrating Life Day. Which, and then everybody said, "Are you going to do a holiday special?" He goes, "We'd love to." And it's been 5-6 years, Jon Favreau. We're getting a stupid movie that nobody asked for, but you can't give us the holiday special that we've all been shouting from the rooftops and the rafters for.
Actually, I watched a documentary about the holiday special. It was really good. It also delved into Donnie Marie did a Star Wars episode.
Whoa,
Chris Christopherson.
Yeah. They were actually very prophetic. They didn't realize it because Donnie and Marie played Luke and Leia. So
that's what planted the seed in Sir George's mind. So it works so well on Donnie and Marie.
Yeah, that Tony the Tiger is Darth Vader, and
that's fantastic.
Where did you watch that documentary?
Last year, I think it came out, and I downloaded it.
Oh yeah,
Check
it out.
It's not on Disney Plus. It's on something else.
They don't want you to know the truth.
They had Johnny Osmond, and you had Paul Lynde as Grand Mark Tarkin. That was.
Right.
Yeah, he was. I know we're going off topic, but he was talking about how his brothers played the stormtroopers, and that was like the greatest time of their lives. They were like so thrilled they got to dress up as stormtroopers. I mean, it's really. It makes more sense in the holiday special because there's lines, but it's still bad.
Well, it sounds like something I want to watch, so I'm gonna search that for that when I can. Today we're gonna talk Star Wars, of course. This is a Star Wars channel, Star Wars podcast. We're gonna talk Star Wars on the day to say thanks, and we're gonna talk about the sequels and what Lucasfilm can do to bridge some gaps in those. So let's start off with the sequels. I'm gonna go around roundtable discussion here, just really quickly. Start off with what gaps you would like to have seen filled. This, by the way, when we had like a little pre-talk before, this is how I should have phrased it when I was first talking to you. I said the confusing manner that I brought in. But what gaps would you actually like to see filled now that the sequels have come and gone? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Oh boy. I mean, the gaps between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens is the juiciest chunk of meat that I don't think very many people have taken a bite of outside of Disney Plus, right? I mean, like apart from those shows, I don't know if the comics touch that. A couple of the books touch it, but in like the most ancillary ways where it's like, here's what a droid was doing on a planet you've never heard of book. And then there's the whole between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker where there was a year of war, like full-on war. I don't even know if we know what that war is called in the Star Wars universe. But there was a war with the First Order, and that's just, it's there. It's low-hanging fruit to be plucked.
Let me unmute my mic. Heidi, what about you?
Unfortunately, the time the sequels came out, a lot of the actors were too old to play their characters, at least the way we wanted to see them. I hate to say it, but I agree with Andrew. We didn't get what we wanted to see. I wanted to know how they brought together the New Republic. I mean, I know it's in the books, but to quote my sister, why should I have to read a book to understand a movie? I want to know what went down with Han and Leia. I mean, here's this relationship, Han and Leia, that we've been rooting for years. We want to know what happens, then it comes back, oh, we're divorced. It's like, okay. And like, I want to know who Snoke is. I have no idea. I know we didn't know who the Emperor was, but we didn't know who any of the, when Star Wars started, we didn't know who any of the characters were. So the fact that we didn't know who the Emperor was wasn't really that much I feel like we need to know. But then when the sequels came out, the villain is Snoke, and we already have these established characters, and all of a sudden we don't know who this villain is. Where did he come from? It doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of like throw you into something. And I feel like there needs to be more information filled in. And like you said, and I think I said this last week, it's like the trilogy had 7 and 9, and even though I love The Rise of Skywalker, it's like The Rise of Skywalker was a one-off film, and like they lost episode 8 with all the information we needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lauren.
Oh, it's one of those questions where we think about it, right? Like this is a looming, like what happened between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. Like, I mean, I agree with Heidi. I think the Leia Han stuff would be really interesting to just learn more of. I think Luke's journey would be really interesting to like, what did he do post Return of the Jedi? I know we've gotten very little information, like sprinkles, right? Nothing concrete of what he did between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And I agree with Andrew. I think that time frame is probably the most juicy of all of them because there's just so much. That's the biggest gap, right? I mean, that's as big. Well, I don't know if it's as big, but it's a gap like there was between Revenge of the Sith and then A New Hope, right? There's just this time, and seeing and getting to know maybe what our main OG characters were going through, like Heidi said, like Han and Leia, what happened in that relationship? What, again, we get little bits and pieces in books and maybe comics, but we don't know the full story, right? What really happened? And then again, yeah, I love the politics of Star Wars. So like, how did they function to get to where they are in the sequel trilogy, right? We're getting a little of it, right? We've seen bits and pieces in Mando and in Ahsoka. Again, you get hints of what it's been like, but I would love to really dive into those early days, right? To know that the hubris of the Republic, the New Republic, whatever I think they're called at that time, how they believe that the Empire was gone, and yet it comes back, right? It comes back to a new order, the First Order. So there's just so many questions and so many, answers to do. I mean, really, we have a whole book on Phasma, right? But like her, her upcome in the First Order, like those kind of stories, I'd be really fascinated in. And then again, like even Finn's story, like that kind of like what they did with the First Order stormtroopers and like how that whole program, again, we're getting little bits and pieces, but like I would love to know those broader like concepts of how did the New Republic get to where they are, and then really how did the First Order, right? Because that was pretty like underground, like they kept it hush hush. Again, we've seen bits and pieces of it, but like to get more of that information too, I would love those type of stories. And I think that's where those gaps could fill it in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. I think that's the best spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of gaps that can obviously be filled, and that's for any trilogy, especially one that takes place decades after the prior one. But Heidi brought up the fact that the actors kind of aged out in between, right? And when the actors were of the prime age, they were busy making the prequels. So they couldn't, so like Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, when they were perfect for what we kind of all, I think, kind of hoped for a, sequel trilogy aged them, they were making other movies that took place earlier. So by the time we caught up and we got to them, they had aged out, and we got what we got with them. And that could be a debate for another day on how people feel about that. But today, let's talk about how they could still bridge these gaps, because the gaps, but obviously technology is a big answer to a lot of these questions, as you can probably AI these people in, and everybody loves AI. Like nobody has an issue with AI at all. But the other option is, and Heidi brought this up, this is her topic. I asked all the Patreon and she suggested this one, is you can use animation. You can have animated shows, series, films, whatever, to bridge the gap between what we had or where we were and where we are, and kind of give us a stronger clarification on what's going on by the time we get to the sequels with characters. And I think the one, and Heidi, I don't know if you might agree with this, but with Scotty always brings up on our Flying Casuals on Mondays, is Luke Skywalker obviously pissed a lot of people off. Right, a lot of people were pissed off with Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi. And again, that's another argument for another day, talking for another day. But to kind of get your head around it, you could do an animated series like The Clone Wars to show us how he got from Return of the Jedi, where we last see him, to being miserable milking a space cow in The Last Jedi. And I really want to know how he found out about milking that space cow. That's what I want to know more than anything. But
there was some trial and error involved.
But how did he know? He's like, of all the animals on the island, he's like, that space cow on the beach. Got some nice nets.
That's one named Mura Jade.
Mura Jade. But that, so let's talk about the idea of we'll go around the same of the idea of animation. Would you be on board to see an animation? Not just because you're all Star Wars fans, which you are, but would you be okay with being like, okay, you know what, this is a good way to do it, or are you like, don't, like, animation is not the key here, it needs to be live action? Like, feel free to say whatever you want, because the chat's very, very decent, and everybody loves Star Wars nowadays, so don't worry. They've already decided that Star Wars is dead by the time they get to this part of the video. Andrew, will start to you.
Yeah, man, I have been clamoring for this and like, I'm so shocked that we are 5 years out from Rise of Skywalker and we haven't heard even a whisper of them talking about pursuing this, because it's like, it is literally right now, it is not just the best way, but one of the only real great ways to tell that story and fill in those blanks, to tell the story of young Luke and young Han and young Leia after Jedi. Sure, you can do it in a comic and a novel, but again, why tuck it away in something that a percentage of Star Wars fans will get to see and experience? One of the biggest complaints that I remember hearing throughout the Mandalorian seasons were people complaining about the New Republic and how they say the New Republic feels bland and uninteresting, and it's not capturing them the way they want it to. And I think the reason is because, the only New Republic that we're getting is being funded by live action TV budgets, and that's not cutting it. That's why there seems to be one New Republic X-Wing pilot who just pops up everywhere we go. Like, if we let them play in that animated sandbox the way they did with Clone Wars, I've never seen anything open up just the world of any media, of any canon anywhere, as much as Clone Wars opened up the world of Star Wars. And the sequels really focused on a narrow bandwidth of that world. So imagine opening that up, and then imagine making the New Republic shine and just soar, and meeting all these new characters who are part of it, so that one day, 8 years from now, when Mandalorian season 10 is on and they make their first live action appearance, we can go, oh, instead of going, oh, the New Republic's planned. Right? It's there waiting for them to open. They just, I don't understand why it hasn't happened already. And Heidi, I know you agree with me.
I know, I'm scared. I mean, I want to know the story. It's I know the sequels made some mistakes that the prequels made. Like during the prequels, when you had Anakin and Obi-Wan in the elevator, and somebody said, "Oh, thank you for getting me out of that the harrowing experience on whatever planet." I'm like, I'd rather see that than watch you two in an elevator right now. But like Rise of Skywalker, we're talking about Luke and Lando went on this adventure looking for this wayfinder. I'm like, I want to see that story.
Yeah.
I don't want to see flying stormtroopers. I could care less about flying stormtroopers. I liked Rise of Skywalker. It's not my favorite movie, but there were fun parts. I just feel like there was stuff missing in between the fun parts. And also, I will go a little bit off here. I would say that if you want to get into something, call it Legends or EU or AU or Star Trek did their Kelvin timeline. If you don't make it canon, if you just do stories about Legends, you could probably recast these characters because, or even present it in a way, or even if you want to be in canon, you could have like Mark Hamill playing old Luke Skywalker talking about his adventures, and when he's telling the story, then maybe it could get away with different actors because you could see it as the audience, us listening to him tell the story, picturing the story as he tells it because we might not know exactly what these characters look like. So there is a clever way you can do it with live action, but it can be tricky. But if that doesn't work, I would say definitely go with animation because there are way too many stories we need to know. And the same thing with, like I said, with how did Luke Skywalker get to that point is the same thing I just made about Luke and Han. I mean, I'm sorry, Leia and Han. So that's what I have to say about that.
Laura?
Yeah, I think animation is probably the most logical and the most probably realistic of any of the choices. I mean, yeah, like Andrew said, comics, books, cool, but it's not going to grab, like, that's for the really nerdy in all of us, right? Like, that's the hardcore fans will read those books like we all do, or read the comics, right? And maybe not everybody does, but the better opportunity for more people to get eyes on these type of stories that I think need to be told, I think is animation. You could do live action, and I agree with Heidi. You could do some really interesting maybe ways, like she said, like bring in an old Mark Hamill to tell a story or something, and then bring in a younger looking. I mean, they clearly aren't afraid of doing that, right? We know that in Mando, they're not afraid to do those things in live action. I think the best way to do it though is animation, because I think you could do a few things. One, you could actually get Mark Hamill to voice Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
He's a voice actor.
Yeah.
Like, hello, he's one of the best voice actors. So, yeah, let him voice himself as Luke Skywalker again. Then you can get a lot of the very other talented voice actors to do all these other characters, right? And if you really want to go bold, you could ask Harrison Ford to do a voiceover. Would he do it? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, I think that's the best way to tell the stories of the original trilogy characters that I think a lot of fans want, right? To know what happened between, again, we all go back to Han and Leia, right? What really happened between them? What was Luke's journey? What was he doing for those years? Like Heidi said, what was that whole adventure with him and Lando? You can bring in Lando, right? You can bring these other characters that we have seen in animation already, right? Like we've seen a Lando animation, like they've done that, right? They've done younger Leia. It's easy. It's there. I think it's way more accessible to do it that way and tell the stories that I think people want to know. And then to even go further with, again, the political side of stuff, like Andrew, you were talking about how it's, again, what we have gotten so far, it's very thin layered and it's live action, right? And all that stuff. Animation. animation is really where you can tell those good political stories. Because again, you brought it up before. You brought it up, Andrew. Clone Wars was fantastic for that. I will even say Bad Batch did almost as well of a good job on the political side of stuff. And then Rebels again sprinkled in the little bit of the politics of it, right? Especially towards the end of the series. You can do all that in animation, right? And I think animation is at the point where it feels very real, if that makes sense. Like the animation that can be done now is phenomenal. We've seen it, right? We've seen it in Star Wars animation. We've seen it in like Clone Wars season 7. We've seen it in Bad Batch, which is one of the most beautiful animations that I've seen in Star Wars. Like it's amazing. You can do that. You can do that with animation. And again, I've been on the train for a long time of doing another theatrical animation movie. What would get people to do? What would get people to go see a Star Wars animation? You bring in the OG characters, right? You bring in a Luke, Han, Leia story that people would want to go see, and you put it in animation. Yeah, it's animation. Maybe people will want to see live action. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But I think for the stories that I think we would want to know about, animation is the way to go. It's the way to go. I think it's the only logical, not the only logical. I don't want to say that, but I think it's the most realistic of all the choices to tell the stories we want to tell. Right? Of Luke, Han, Leia, Lando, Chewie, right? R2D2, C3PO, like all of them. Leia, like you could do all of it. And then you can even start sprinkling in some of these characters that we see down the road too, right? Like it's right there. It's right there. I think animation is the way to go.
Yeah, you know what? Sorry, Heidi, go on.
I'm sorry. I know we're going around, but I just want to add that with animation, you can do stuff that you can't do in live action.
Exactly, Heidi.
Yes.
Which is why
cheaper.
Japan anime is so big in Japan because.
Agreed.
There could be 8 seasons of this. Like they could really go all out.
Yep. There's a lot. There's a lot there.
I think my concern with the animation stuff all the time was always that less people will watch it because you kind of touched on it, Lauren, because less people will watch animation. That's the problem. But we are 5 years removed from the rise of Skywalker. Does that even matter now? Like, how about, if you make, and I think the thing is the Star Wars fans that are Star Wars fans, even the ones that kind of have removed themselves a little bit from Star Wars, I'm not talking about like the pure negative, like the ones who genuinely are like, I don't know how I feel about Star Wars, but I still want to give it a chance. If you make a good quality animated show series that goes on however many seasons, but it's good, and you fill in the gaps of what we had, but you do it in a way that people can buy into, like the Clone Wars did for the prequels, because the prequels, everyone forgets how people reacted to the prequels. Like they were the sequels of 2000, like that's what they were. And then the Clone Wars came and people were like, oh, I have a new outlook on the prequels. So it makes me appreciate this and that. And you could totally do that for the sequels. I think it's even easier for the sequels because, like you all said, you have Luke, Han, and Leia that you can utilize, and you can make them like the Mandalorian season 2 finale. When Luke came back, everyone's jaw was on the ground. Everybody loved it. And all the people that hated the last Jedi Luke were like, that's my Luke. You can do that for 6 or 7 seasons of an 8-season show. And then you can show us how he became that Luke, and then you can go along that journey with the Luke Skywalker, and it makes more sense in animation. And the thing is, the fans that have made up their mind about Luke Skywalker, they're not coming back anyway. So animation is going to get the diehard fans in, and they're the ones that are going to watch it. We're the ones that are going to watch it anyway. And then you can convince the ones that are on the fence, like, okay, you know what? They obviously I don't think had an idea when they did it. But they're like, we have an idea. This is how, I understand Luke now because you. And I think that's the one thing that the sequels really suffered from the whole way through was just that 40, 30, whatever year gap of, Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. And you're like, but why are we here? And every time they're like, why are we here? Don't worry about it. They're like, but why are we at this point? Don't worry about it. But what about Snoke? Don't worry about it. Maz, how did you get Luke's lightsaber? Don't even think about it. We'll tell you another time, but probably not. Like there's things like that. Could you imagine like a 3-episode arc of just finding that lightsaber?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Like there's little things they have. The material is like given to us because they didn't answer half the questions that they raised. So just do it. And I think like for me now, I'm like, as much as I was like, I don't know, animation, not as much people are going to watch it. Now I'm at the point where it doesn't matter, I mean, yes, more people would, but and the other thing too is if you do live action, and I thought the Luke stuff in live action was fine. Like, it was obviously jarring and whatever, but like it was fine. But the thing is, if you do that for longer than 3 minutes at a time,
Yep.
and you don't give them the budget of Andor or Acolyte, and you're stuck teasing the volume for everything, that's when fans, even if your story is good, that's when fans are going to start to turn on you again. So I think animation is the safest bet, and they're Disney. They have the best animator. They used to, but they have the best animators in the world, so I can work on it now. And so, yeah, I think, you know what? I've changed my tune on it, and I say, let's get animated.
And
You-
I
you- sorry,
go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
Oh, you brought up the lightsaber and how that could be like a 3-episode arc. One of my favorite things about the Clone Wars cartoon is that format of just a mixed box of chocolates where every time you start a new episode, you're like, is this one going to be about Rex? Is this going to be about Obi-Wan and Ahsoka? Is it going to be about a random guy from the Jedi Council going off somewhere to do some stuff? Like, it became this fun grab bag. And you have so many characters with not just Luke, Han, and Leia, but Lando, Chewbacca, the droids, Wedge, Mon Mothma. Like, what are they doing now? You can go in so many different directions and have that same grab bag mentality.
Yeah. I think too, we don't even like and I'm thinking even to the point of like, where do we even start that series? Like what specific time? And I don't even think you really have to start from 2 weeks after Return of the Jedi. You could get closer to that TFA timeline, and then you're adding, again, you can obviously add context to that animation. You can do really good stuff. I think, like Heidi, you mentioned before too, animation, you can do some really fun stuff that I don't think you could do in live action. But then you can start telling the stories that are familiar with TFA and it's closer to that timeline. Whereas you don't have, like I said, we don't have to start again, day one of New Republic. What happened, right? Day one of Luke being Luke. What is he doing? That stuff. I can learn about it, but I don't need to start there. You can start it when he's a little bit older, and then again, you could use flashbacks, whatever you want to do, but you can get closer to that timeline and fill in those gaps, like we're talking about, and it make more sense, right? Because then you're really connecting with the TFA stuff. Because then I think if you start back further, which would still be fun, right? It'd still be fun to learn about what younger Luke and Han and Leia all did. But for me, I feel like I would want to know maybe a little bit older and learn through them what their experiences have been to get them to wherever point they are. I'm okay with that. I don't know how if you guys feel the same way, but I don't feel like we have to start way back. We can push it to where it's past and maybe it's only say 10 years or whatever between till we get to the TFA events, right? We don't have to start where it's 30 years or 20 years, whatever, right? That's just how I feel. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I think it would, I don't think they have to start that far back. They can still start to a point where it makes sense and you're close to TFA. So then you can tell those behind this, the political stuff still, and it makes sense. And then, we can see more of the First Order stuff, the upcoming of all that. And it would still make sense because you're closer to that timeline. That's just how I feel. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I'll say the one thing about time that you brought up that is a great point is the Acolyte. I felt because it was 100 years before the Phantom Menace, some of the stuff with the Jedi almost felt like it was happening way too long time ago, right? Like it was almost like, oh, this is going to go on for another 100 years. Like it was almost like if the gap was a little bit shorter, I mean, it didn't ruin the show. Like that's not issue with it. But like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, it starts here. Like that's great, but 100 years is a long time for that to like fall apart. It's like, and so the point of like the time, like maybe don't go all the way back. Get to like a decent time frame. Like, you know what would be a good amount to fall from is this, like 10 years, 15 years, whatever, maybe 5 years, whatever it is. If it has to be 20, it's 20. But yeah, because I'm thinking about the Acolyte when you're saying that, I was like, oh yeah, that one, there was like 100 years and we're at this. It's like, okay, but now we got to kind of just like wait this out. And like, what, like when I can't remember his name, but the new or the old Republic, whatever, the Republic guy was like, the High Republic guy was like, I'm taking this to the council. It's like, that's 100 years still.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the outcome's going to be because they're still there in the Phantom Menace. Like, so yeah, I think the point of time is that's a good point.
That's how long it takes for the Senate to make up its mind.
That makes sense.
I mean, right? I mean, it would kind of add, it would track, right? With politics taking as long. Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think it'd just be an interesting, like where they would start. I'd be fascinated with, right? Because I think that would set the tone of like, okay, so we're here. Now we're filling the gaps either a little bit behind or we're catching up to how much time are we catching up to those TFA events. I think it'd be interesting. But you could do, Andrew, like you said, you could do a lot. You could do, 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And tell a great story.
There's a lot you can tell, and you can jump around in time too, like Clone Wars did. How much do we know about what this Mandalorian and Grogu movie is supposed to be in terms of like, is it ending the Mandalorian story? Is this the movie that ties together with Ahsoka and Thrawn and Skeleton Crew and everything? Or like, because if that is the case, you could theoretically announce this cartoon show after and say, now this is going to fill in all the blanks between this movie and The Force Awakens, which is whatever, 20 years of whatever.
Right.
Hi, Grogu.
I heard it's a series finale, but they decided not to do season 4, and now it's the series finale. I don't know, but I don't think it's the end of them. I think it is going to tie into Ahsoka, and then there's supposed to be a Filoni-verse movies. It's going to tie everything together. I'm not sure. Who knows? Because some of the grandiose plans that they mentioned don't always get made.
They're very reactionary, like we say all the time. It's like, Mando made a lot of money. Never mind, we're doing another Mando movie. Like, how about you just keep your mouth shut and don't tell us anything and just make a movie? And if we like it, make another one. And if we don't, make a different movie. I don't know why you have to keep it now. Oh, no more trilogies. Sure, buddy. Sure. I don't believe the word.
Yeah, I think like Heidi said, my understanding is the same, where it's season 4 or the end of the Mando stuff, and then the Filoni movie is supposed to tie everything, which is supposed to, I believe, my understanding is the Skeleton Crew takes place during this same timeline of like the Mando stuff. So I wouldn't be I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mando show up in Skeleton Crew at some point.
There are rumors, so
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
I just think, the Mandalorian and Grogu story ended after the 2nd season.
Yeah.
And then the Mandalorian story ended after the 3rd season. I'm really curious what's going to end after this movie. Because I'm all in on it. I love Mandalorian and Grogu. I would never, if you're like, we're going to keep going forever, I'd be like, okay, let's do this. Like, I love the characters. I'll keep watching them. I don't care. But it's just funny because after season 2, I'm like, oh, they're done. Like their story felt like complete. But at the end of season 3, they kind of go back to just like, let's just be bounty hunters and what's our next job. So I wonder if this is going to be like a lore breaking, creating kind of mythical event that we're going to watch, or if it's just going to be like, here's a fun action romp in the Star Wars universe, enjoy it because you haven't had a movie in 5 years. and the Rey movie may be a trilogy or maybe never happening ever, so take what you can get at this moment. It's
a trilogy of cancellations is what it is.
I mean, if like Pedro Pascal says, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, I mean, oh no, then was it an accident? It changed his face and his voice, but he keeps his head covered the whole time anyway. So
I'll bet you they could find a voice actor that could
Oh yeah.
Not gonna, yeah.
So I mean, even if that happens, they could keep it going
Yeah.
forever. I mean, Grogu's
Right.
like the Simpsons. They don't. He can't hit. If they don't want him to, he won't hit puberty.
Mhm.
Which is why the Simpsons is going for 30 some odd years because
Yeah.
other shows about families, the kids hit puberty and he wants to see it anymore.
And again, going back to like, if we want to learn more about Mando, and if they are again tying in these stories, because Mando and all that takes place like, what do we know, like a few years post Return of the Jedi? 5. So I mean, if we wanted more animation, right? Like, I mean, you could add them into this whole mix if you wanted to, because again, Pedro Pascal, the guy can do some voiceover, obviously. So like, he's right there. Katie Sackhoff has done obviously voiceover for Star Wars before. So again, like, you could really, if they wanted to, they really could do a lot in this, within animation, right? They could tie in with the original trilogy characters, right? Mix it in with some Mando stuff, mix it in with TFA tie-ins, again, depending on where we are in the timeline and all that. But that they can do a lot, and I think the goal would be for me, for them to just maybe answer some questions and just fill in, again, like we want, fill in those gaps, right?
Mhm.
Just fill in and I'm not even looking for every answer to be
Yeah.
or every question to be answered. I just want a little bit of clarity, if that makes sense. Like, just a
Yes.
little bit of clarity on certain stuff, and then give me more information at the same time.
I
That's
mean,
all I would look for.
I would start a movie like at the Battle of Jakku. And if you
Mm.
don't want to stay there too long, you can move 5 years. Like
Yep.
I mean, that's what they used to do. I mean, I think A New Hope and Empire, they're like 3 years apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I think audiences are sophisticated enough where you could do a Battle of Jakku and then have other parts of that series in a different timeline, like a different time, like 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. We go back to Jakku. I think people would understand that. I think, especially, I mean, you would write the words on the screen anyway. 5 years ago, Battle of Jakku. But you could have those. I mean, series do that all the time nowadays. Andrew's thinking, though. Andrew's got a problem with this.
No problem.
Andrew doesn't like time jumps. Andrew doesn't know how to do math. He's like, I can't. I mean, his order of his books is 14 and 1.
That's true. I'm just going by what my arithmetic jigsaw puzzle taught me. All right. I may not have put it together very well,
But
but at the end of the day,
the Battle of Jakku was such a big deal for like a year.
yeah.
And then they're like, forget it. Forget about the Battle of Jakku. We don't want you to. I was like, but you spent a year. I paid like $5 to play it on Battlefront or whatever. Like, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, screw this. Don't worry about Jakku anymore. It doesn't exist. And you're like, what happened? Like, I think that could be a lot of fun there. Yeah, there's so much things. Like, and that's something you could do where you could create like a new Captain Rex. Like, a character like that where doesn't exist in the movies, and all of a sudden you've created this character that fans. I mean, Ahsoka is obviously another example, but I'll go with Captain Rex. Like, and fans all of a sudden love that character. And you know what? I brought this up. I talked about this book like 10 years ago on the podcast. We've been around for 8 years, so that doesn't make sense either. But this book called Battlefront Twilight Company. And did you read that book? I love that.
I haven't. I haven't read it yet, but I do have it though. Everybody raves about it though. Everybody raves about it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know. I thought
people that I've read it. People that I know read it.
People that read it, and the 6 of us that own it. So, it's a solid. I mean, I haven't read it in years, but it's a solid book. And the characters, I'm like, oh, these are fun characters. And it was kind of like the Aftermath books. This first book, anyway, didn't have what. Like, I was like, oh man, they should have mixed this. But it's just like, you just do that. You can create new characters for that storyline for the Battle of Jakku. I don't need to know anybody that was there. And the people that I do know, they can come in as cameos once in a while.
Right.
I mean, Rebels did that, like you said, with Lando and Leia. Like, they would just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess who's here? Lando, Leia, 3PO. Yeah. It's Star Wars. Back to business. Like, oh, perfect. And they have that. And yeah, Heidi?
I was just gonna say earlier, you used Lauren, right? I blocked names. I'm sorry. Yeah, Lauren was talking about how Mark Hamill does card animated anyway. I mean, he's done Robot Chicken. Mark Hamill, even Carrie Fisher one time did Robot Chicken. Billy Williams, Anthony Daniels, they've all done Robot Chicken, and they even did this recent. And James is gonna kill me for saying this, but they even did this recent Lego.
No, not even.
So it's not like they haven't done animation, so you could get them to do it.
Laura, did you watch the new Lego special? It's not new anymore.
I know I haven't yet. It is on my queue to watch. I do like. I mean, again, super side note. I like the Lego stuff because it's silly. It's fun. It's not. I don't take it. Not that I don't take it serious, but like I don't have to take it serious. Like it's there for pure and entertainment and joy. Is how I take those.
I will tell you, it was the best of the Legos.
And they've been good. Like all the Legos have been pretty solid.
I'm just gonna say it's willing to take risks that Disney isn't willing to take risks with other things.
That's fair. That's fair. And
sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, real quick. So and I think we were talking kind of like time jumps, right? If they did a series, each season could be a time jump, a little bit of a time jump, right? Like season 1, we're in this time frame, and then maybe the following season we jump a little bit ahead. So then you could start maybe in the way back, like we've been talking about a little bit, or at a certain point, but then you can get closer to TFA, right? Yeah. Just each season you get closer and closer, just kind of like what Andor's doing. Like each arc is a little bit of a time jump, especially I guess in season 2, it's supposed to be like time jumps between each like 3 or 4 episodes. So they could do that too. Again, I think the possibilities with animation are limitless, and I think that's where they really and they everybody, in my opinion, I feel like Star Wars animation, it's beloved by a lot of people because of the storytelling that they do in it. It's been so solid. Right? Like I think that's their bread and butter. Like that's where you can really tell some good stories, man. Because again, it's on the quote unquote cheap, right? But you can do and tell some really great stories, and they've done it. They do it consistently in animation. I think that's the best way to do it.
And not only has the sorry, Heidi.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to talk over people, but I just real quick. I mean, the generation who grew up with animation being for kids, that's kind of going towards the wayside. In fact, animation when it first started out was for adults, like Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry. Those are all adult cartoons before movies. What happened was they started showing them on Saturday mornings for kids, so that's why animation and cartoons, at least in this country, not in Asian countries, it's considered kids. But as kids, the kids from 90s and 2000s who went through all this, they've grown up with animation being geared towards Star Wars, so they're not going to see animation as kids stuff as like someone from my generation, which is a very old generation. I gotta say old.
It's true. Animation was just for kids for a long time in this North America, we'll say, because we're not in the same country, so I can't say this country. But this is country too. It was like for kids. Even now, like the older generations, if you mention something animated, it's like, I don't watch that for kids. Yeah. But is it? No, it's for kids. I don't want to watch it. It's like, okay, you're missing out. No, I'm not. Yeah. That's the mentality that they have. So that's a tough one to break. But again, like you said, Heidi, that's kind of shifting for the younger generations. And if you have a good story, I just think Star Wars fans especially don't care. They're going to go to it. Now the question is there enough the answer is yes, but is there enough Star Wars fans to justify doing this in live action? Again, the answer is yes, but does Disney feel that way, that they would spend, because it's, even though it's cheaper than live action, it's still a lot of money, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? So like, are they going to want to spend that money on that instead of, something else that I don't know what they spend money on, but that's the question.
Yeah. It's hard, right? I mean, it's how they want to run their business, but I think animation's really the place to go, because you could do so much. The possibilities are limitless, and that's where, again, I think since the acquisition of Star Wars and Disney and all that, I think animation has been the most solid.
Yeah.
I mean, storytelling wise, like it's been the most consistent.
I don't think you can argue that.
No, and not only has it been the most solid and most consistent, but I mean, we all love the prequels here. We love them; they're so much fun. But one of the things, by the way, very quick side, Akbar, if you have not seen the new horror movie Heretic, starring Hugh Grant, if you're a Jar Jar fan, you need to go see the movie Heretic starring.
I saw the clip.
Oh, okay.
The clip's making its round on the Twitter, the X. It's making its rounds, and I saw it. I was like, "Is this real or did someone AI this?"
Yeah,
that's all I'll say about it. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, we love the prequels, but one of the things that made the Clone Wars cartoon so beautiful is that it smoothed out a lot of the wrinkles that the prequels had, and it got those rough edges down to a nice sheen and made the prequels even better by association. And I like most of the sequels, but I think they could really use that same touch right now from the animation department. And I'm like, not to poo-poo on the man or anything, but let's be real here. J.J. Abrams looked at that 32-year gap between Jedi and Force Awakens. He didn't say, I have a great idea for what goes there. What he really said is, there's a lot of question marks there, so my mystery box fetish is going nuts right now. So he presented us with all these questions that we don't have clarity on right now. And like you said, Lauren, it's not about demand answers to all those questions right now. It's just, JJ, you told us, all this really interesting stuff happened in that dark period. Trust me. Okay, can we just see a couple now? That's it. That's all we're asking. Can we see a couple now? Particularly because he's introducing things as if they're important. Cough, Knights of Ren, cough again, and then not following through. So I
forgot about the Knights of Ren.
I'm sorry. I
actually, this whole time we've been talking, they never crossed my mind. That's how much I forgot about them.
So cartoon...
I'm not even just saying that. That's a fact. I forgot they existed in this moment.
Let this cartoon do some of that heavy lifting now, and let it, particularly in the Snoke terms, because that's such a hot button topic. Though I feel like Filoni is kind of tap dancing closer to that, so maybe let him do his thing. But there's a lot there that was put on the table and then never given any justifiable explanation for being on the table. So let those wrinkles get smoothed out. We need it.
I mean, something I've learned from The Acolyte and Last Jedi is that Disney Star Wars is not good at mysteries. Because they decided to have a mystery with Holdo. Who was she? The whole thing was you were supposed to suspect she was a spy, and it turns out she wasn't a spy. Turns out she was right, but we didn't have any way of knowing that. And so I think maybe animation could help redeem this character, because I think she turned out to be a very interesting character, especially the way she sacrificed herself in the end to save everyone else. I guess there was a comic book about her and Lando being lovers or something. Like, I
almost did a spit take right now. I drank at the wrong time. But
I did not see that one coming at all. Wow.
No, here's the thing. I see things. I don't read comic books because I have ADHD and I can't sit and read a comic book because my mind goes to the picture, so I won't understand it. But I see things like there's a comic book where, like Lando has a relationship with Holdo. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things in these characters we don't know anything about. And I feel like this character needs to be justified. Okay, you might not like the character, but she's out there, so I'm curious who she is. I know it looks strange that she's commanding the ship in an evening gown. The reason she's wearing an evening gown is because they were at Han's funeral, but that was cut from the Last Jedi for time. So that's why. And I feel like this character needs exploration because she was there. She was a major part of it. And the whole thing about trying to make sure, is she a good guy, is she a bad guy? It just didn't. That's my only problem with Last Jedi, is this whole thing about who she is and stuff, and turned out no, she's not a spy. She's actually the good guy. She's actually in the right. Like, it's the same thing. They did the mystery with The Acolyte, and it just if they hadn't done the mystery of the Acolyte would have been a much better show. And I really like the Acolyte, but there was a lot of stuff about it I didn't like. And it's the whole thing of trying to do this mystery thing. And they just shouldn't do mysteries. Do this, not worry about mystery.
Sometimes you just tell people what it is, and it'll work better than, because especially when you figure out the mystery beforehand too, and you're like, okay, oh, we're still doing this, we're still going there. But Heidi, that bugged you more than milking a space cow? I
grew up in Indiana, so.
My two least favorite parts of the movie are probably this milking the space cow, because I think about it often, and the Muppet-sized fish that he catches. I'm like, why is he holding Clifford from the Muppets in his hand? I don't know what's going on here. Google Clifford from the Muppets, because I think they've kind of like thrown him out.
I remember that guy. He was cool.
Nope. Muppets Tonight. He hosted Muppets Tonight. Kevin Clash voiced him. People, get on it. Let's go. I don't know if you're allowed to say that anymore, Kevin Clash. I don't know if he's been canceled for real or not. He's no longer Elmo, I don't think. There was issues. We won't get into it. That's beyond me. I don't know what happened there. I thought they were cleared up. Maybe they weren't. I gotta I'm editing this part out. I won't. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. We'll do final thoughts right now, and then you can plug your books. Andrew, any final thoughts on this topic?
I mean, the cartoon opportunity is right there. It's waiting for them. Nobody's going to say no to it. Nobody in their right mind thinks they can maintain a movie or anything else in live action with young Luke, Han, and Leia as well as they could maintain an animated show. So it's there. Just do it, Luke. Stop making Tales of the Jedi and just focus on this.
Tales of the Jedi. You know what? Sorry. The Tales show sounds like a Sonic show. But like that is like actually something they could expand on and fill in little gaps for these. But anyway, we should have brought that up sooner. Heidi, any final thoughts?
I mean, I want to see. There's a lot of things I'd like to see. I think everybody's afraid to touch this for some reason. I maybe don't know how to write it. I know they did in EU, and I've said it a million times. I want to see Anakin's interaction with Leia. In my headcanon, when she died, she went to the world between worlds, and they spoke there. They did her final Jedi trial with him in the world between worlds, the same way Ahsoka did. And they also, in my headcanon, that she worked with him to bring Han across to save Ben.
That's cool.
I like it. You should write for them.
I know.
Lauren?
Yeah, I animation's, I think, the most realistic, and I think the best way to tell stories that I think, like Andrew has said, like we all have been saying, really smooth out some of the questions that have popped up in the sequel trilogy that maybe could be, again, easily answered or easily explained in animation, especially when we want to go to the original characters, right? And obviously we can't do that in live action. I mean, you can, but like, A, it's going to cost. B, do they want to tell that story in live action, right? That's why I think animation is really the answer. And we talk about, Heidi, you just brought up like, interactions of characters. I would watch a 3-part arc of Ahsoka and Luke talking about Anakin by a fire. I would sit there on pins and needles wanting to hear that, right? Like those type of stories you can really, really, really dive into. I mean, imagine that Ashley does the voice and, Mark does the voice of Luke, and that's who's talking to each other. Like that would be amazing, right? So it's like those stories. Just even those simple little interactions of characters. I think animation is the best way to do it. We've seen them do it successfully, I think. I think animation's where they can continue that success. So yeah, all on board.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned Bad Batch. I think Resistance would be probably the low one that they've done.
And it was still good too, right? That's the crazy thing. Like,
but Rebels was like phenomenal by the time.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
it started off and people. I remember the argument was like, it looks too much like a Disney. They rounded the characters. You're like,
Mhm.
yeah, it looks like a kid's show. And then all of a sudden you're like, why is this so good? And then I'll never forget. It was the mid-season trailer from season 2, right after the Force Awakens, and Ezra picks up the green cross guard saber and Darth
Mhm.
Maul's voice. And you're like, what is happening right now? Why is this the best thing ever? And then it just was like nonstop. It just didn't. It was relentless in how good it was. Like the Bendu, bring that back. Like they're just like every time they did something, you're like, all right, space whales, sure, I guess. And then they kept coming back. You're like, oh, space whales, they're a big deal. And I animation, like you said, Lauren, like they seem to have a grasp on Star Wars more than they do in live action. And I don't know. I'm curious though. I know we're wrapping up, but I'm curious if it's because there was a Hollywood Reporter article that came out, and they're like, Star Wars is a mess. The movies, no one knows what they're doing, and they're all like the infighting. Everybody wants Rey, but nobody wants to communicate with each other. But they said the TV stuff wasn't really like that, and I'm wondering if animation is even less like that. If there's even less of like the micromanaging when it comes to animation, and they're almost like giving almost like a free reign. They're just letting us do this stuff. Like I wonder if there's like that going on there because it doesn't cost as much as the other stuff, and if it fails, like Resistance was two seasons. Resistance, it's fine. They're like, yeah, we ended it. Like it's almost like they kind of like, whatever, just do what you're doing and we'll let you go. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And they're taking more risks and shit. Like Rebels took a lot of risks. Like I thought Ezra was going to the dark side for a while, right? You're like, what's going to happen? They started doing things, and they don't do that so much in the live action stuff, especially, and in the movies, like the sequel trilogy. I think it was The Last Jedi when they took a chance and the fan base went, they're like, no more chances. Everything's just got to be a safe. But animation, and if that's the way it's going to be, then take the reins and tell the stories that fill in the gaps. That's how I feel. Okay, Andrew,
Agreed.
you can plug your book.
Which book? This one?
No.
Or that one?
That one.
My book is called We Were Wizards, and it's available right now on Amazon. If you don't like hardcover, you can get an ebook or a paperback if that's more your speed. And there's magic in these, and there's swords in these, and there's adventure in these. So as Star Wars fans, I don't know why you don't already own these. Plus, everything in these books is canon.
Is that a hardcover?
Yeah, these are both hardcovers.
No, I don't have hardcover.
The sound of hardcovers knocking. There we go.
Yeah, I don't have hardcovers. All right, Heidi, you can plug yours now. Oh, and Kid Fisto making an appearance.
Kid Fisto.
Somebody's not allowed on the dinner table.
Yes, I am. That's a great one.
Something to read by the warmth of the Yule log candle. Cookies by Jamais Razile. I don't know.
Never heard. I've heard my name pronounced wrong my whole life. Never like that, and I love it.
By one of my books.
Yeah.
You can get these 3 under my pen name, Pendrighton, if you're into dark horror erotica.
Which is going to be made into animation soon. Just
yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one's under my real name, Heidi Fetter. So if any Japanime like Toei out there, or that Canadian company that made all those raunchy 80s cartoons like Fire and Ice or Heavy Metal, please give me a call.
I miss those kind of cartoons, man.
TMI. And Lauren, do you have a book you'd like to plug?
Unfortunately, no. I am not as creative. Not as creative as my other partners over there with the books.
No, Scotty Hawk said he would buy this if Andrew would read it to him.
Oh yeah. All right.
Can I read it to him?
Yeah. I think he wants to read it recording and then see it.
Okay. I don't know about an audiobook. Just call him. I'll give you his phone number. You just call him, and every night read a chapter.
Only if I can do the Peter Falk voice from The Princess Bride the whole time.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I should do this podcast like that. So, Lauren, any books you're reading?
Right now I am not reading any Star Wars books yet. I have so many I'm like looking at right now to read, which I probably should. No, but I do have my podcast, the Galactic Podcast, where me and my cousin talk all things Star Wars. So you guys can follow us on all the social medias, and we're on Apple Pod, Google Play, Spotify, all the major podcasting platforms. So go give us a listen.
I only listen on Amazon podcasts,
There you go.
which they just gave me Audible as part of my package. And I
Nice.
thank you. Now I have to listen to audiobooks.
Star Wars audiobooks.
Ah,
Very good.
Yeah, actually, the productions are pretty good on those.
Very
Yeah,
good. They're very
yeah.
good.
They're radio dramas basically.
Mhm.
All right, that is all we got. Okay, that's all
I
we got.
would say we get like female voice actresses to read the audiobooks because it kind of takes me out when that guy's doing Ray's voice. It just
I don't know. I think
it's good, but I can't.
You know what though? For all the like the budget they do put in those, because they are good quality, like they do put good production quality in there. But yeah, you're like, why don't they just get a male and female, and the female reads the female and the male reads the male, and whoever like reads the narration part's fine, but you know, just spice it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, they don't want to pay two people for one job. That's the bottom line. All right, chat. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Would you like Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars people, whoever makes these decisions? We don't know. We're not in the office. Kathleen Kennedy, hold on. Yep. Okay. 2 minutes ago, Kathleen Kennedy was just fired. She got kicked out. Happy Thanksgiving, Kathleen Kennedy, and happy Thanksgiving to you two there, and to all of you watching. If you are celebrating today, we're not. Andrew and I aren't. We're working.
It's just a Thursday for us.
Andrew's watching football. He's a big Detroit Lions fan.
Oh yeah, I love when they scored the home runs.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, may the force of others be with you. Oh, wait, we have an ending. Shh, no one talk.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.